one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 11 of the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast.
You tell me. Yes.
I told you, mate. I told you. Yes. You know who's whispering in your ears, hyped, excited to get in to this MSI pre-episode. It is Initialise, the one and only man in the middle. Hello, sir.
Thank you. Hello, how are you doing? I'm so good. I am very excited to be here talking MSI, doing an EU Masters yesterday. It's been a good week of League of Legends for me, so I've been very much enjoying it. I'm very excited to get chatting MSI and what's going on.
I mean, there's a bit of an asterisk. I mean, yeah, you got to do MSI, but it was well, EU Masters yesterday, but not good.
I don't want to talk about it. Don't talk about it.
Well, you just said it was a great week of League of Legends.
It was a lot of fun. Okay, look. As a caster, it was a lot of fun. I got it.
It was a good cast.
LEC Studios. It was a good cast. Got to mess around with their graphics software. Lots of fun stuff on that front. The NLC fanboy in me was very disappointed at X7 going out 0-3. Game 2 should have been theirs. Game 3 was an awful, awful game where they got handed an awful situation in draft and then it played out as expected. Aside from that, I'm doing really, really well.
Good. Outside of that one tidbit, so that's fine. That's fine. His beautiful co-caster, the man on the other side.
Trouble?
That's me as well.
Nymaera. Sir, your younger brother, mate. I was me. Nymaera. Hello, mate.
Trouble can't fill that role. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, obviously yesterday was a really cool experience. EU Masters from the quarterfinals onwards is going to be broadcast from the LEC studio, so I got to cast with Sam in the LEC studio, which was really cool. Day after his birthday, of course, that happened for you last week as well, didn't it, Sam? You had a birthday.
I did have a birthday.
That was fun. The games were everything was great, but the games. Everything was great for the games, goddammit. But it was still a really fun experience for that. But outside of that, been chugging along, trying to prep for MSI for our own content and to effectively give an outlet for LJL information to the wider international English-speaking world in League of Legends. So for those of you who are interested in that stuff, obviously there should be a good resource, but there's more resources coming, and I'm really looking forward to the tournament start. And Sam's died briefly. He's back.
That's great. And I mean, that's just half of the beauty of it all. It's just your camera, mate. Hopefully, well, we can't actually hear you on the stream at the moment, so just be aware of that until you can. Oh, you're
because audio's coming through the link. If the link dies, then
you die.
That's what it is. Yeah, my ping did just die briefly. It might also be because I just checked my phone off the side. My mother was just calling me, which is bad timing, so I'll have to.
So it's like the Mulan screenshot, which is a really good meme for modern day gaming. It's like, ping, what's wrong?
Yeah, yeah. So it's like you know how I knew I was getting a call? It's because it interfered with my speakers. You get that did noise from.
Yeah.
So I was like, that was coming through. I was like, like someone is about to call me, and what do you know?
You get the low humming sometimes as well.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh god. For me, I've done some interviews. I have been already doing some of that content that Feat.Nymaera has been alluding to. Legit, I'm not gonna lie. I think I've done 5 interviews in my life in League of Legends. One of those was on NLC Div 2. I count the whole broadcast as one interview because a lot of them are like 3 to 5 minutes. So it's hard to actually say it's a proper concrete one where you sit down with the player and really get to know them. So I've done one with Div 2 NLC. That was great fun. I did one on SQ1 all the way back when that was still a thing.
Yeah, 2020, yeah.
Yeah. And then I've only done 3 proper ones, which was Corporal, and fucking Kazu. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean, this is like broadcast interviews. Obviously, we've done interviews for industry stuff. Like we've led a lot of it. That's a very different skill set. Yeah, that's a very different experience.
But Kazu was a fantastic person to talk to, and ultimately, I had to stop talking to him because I had literally done. I jumped into a call with Corporal. We spoke for about an hour, me and Corporal. We only did 10-minute interview, but then we ended up just talking because that's what happens, when you jump in with people that are interesting to you. And then I had to jump off the Corporal call to jump into the call with Kazu. I literally went back to back between the two of them. And then I ended up speaking to Kazu for another hour and a half. And the reason I had dropped the call was because I really needed to go to the toilet because I'd been sitting down in the same seat for about 2.5 hours, and I was like bursting for a loo.
I am sorry, oh mighty head coach of Dead Nation Focus Me, but I really need
Nature
this.
calls.
Goodbye, mate.
Really need to go, but also it was like
the Forge God calls, but so does nature.
It was 11 o'clock over in Japan and everything, and they had got some other stuff, and I was like,
my favorite part of that interview was the noises of Utapod screaming on Valorant on his day off, and Kazi's like, I'm really sorry, I need to explain. That's Utapon. It's his day off. He's playing Valorant with his friends. It's just, I'm watching at Lexi's face, like, try and keep it together while it's happening. It was amazing.
The whole time, I'm just like, I mean, if you want to bring Utapon in, like, that's
hell
fine.
yeah.
Bring him over. Yeah, tell him to say hello.
Obviously, we aren't an official press thing.
No.
So Kazu was very much down for talking with us, just casually. He's said openly, so I'm just passing the information on. He's going to plan to do Twitter Spaces again, something.
Cool.
All
again,
three of us, we were in. So
joined him for one of them last year. Yeah.
So he's planning on doing those again. Have I got any other information I can relay from the DFM camp that helps with people? He's open to DMs. So if you want to ask a question, DM Kazu.
Oh, I've already sent people his way. Sent people his way.
But this is also a shout out to anybody that could be on the broadcast team or anything. Kazu's DMs are open. So if you would like to ask the DFM coach something, he is there. We are also here, though, if you would like our assistance in covering that region, the LJL and Destination Focus Me particularly well. As Nymaera has already mentioned, we have got content in the pipeline. But with that said, gentlemen, I think we actually get into the real meat and potatoes of this episode, because this is our MSI Group reaction, unfolding, kind of unpacking episode, I guess. It's a bit of a weird one, but we did do a broadcast where the three of us kind of sat and watched.
Live reacted to the group draw.
It was something like midnight, 1 a.m, UK Berlin time. It was thankfully it was a lot earlier than it could have been.
Yes, because of the record-breaking quick finals from NA.
Holy moly.
Which let's talk about. I mean, partly I know we wanted to say we wanted to go Group A, Group B, Group C, but I want to just kind of talk about how insane that LCS run was, just very briefly.
Yeah,
massively. Like, we had a couple teams do this lower bracket run. Like G2 as well. Basically,
that's another one.
The mirror, right? And they're now in the same group in Group C. There's a bit of a spoiler, but Evil Geniuses are this team that Peter Dunn in particular got a lot of flack for some of the statements he was making on Twitter. Actually, so did Papa Smithy, but Papa Smithy's a little bit more, how do I put this? He has a certain, I don't know, he built up a lot of goodwill over the years of being like the kind of, hey, your Papa loves you Twitch chat emote in LCK, all that kind of thing. And he was defending a lot of his players as well around the Champions Queue stuff. And obviously, Evil Geniuses pick up these rookies. They're a bit loudmouthy. They're good fun. They've got the banter. And they got a little bit of hate for not playing perhaps the level they were hoping. And then they pull off this insane run where Danny and Jojo pop off. They have a great time of it. But on top of that, serious credit to the backroom staff, who I know there was a comment on the jungle from Monte Cristo, and I know Tim from Oracle's Elixir quoted this one out on Twitter as well, saying, look, there was a statement effectively saying, Danny and Jojo did an incredible job, and they well deserving of the praise they're getting. But you could have put in any other good mid laner, and the coaching staff behind Evil Geniuses could have taken that to a championship. Would have taken it to a championship because the coaching team behind it are so damn good. And
the role which
serious credit to them, and then the veterans and the team building they went into creating this roster of really good, very talented veterans. Vulcan, Impact,
I think
the LEC MVP, and
just to bring it back a little bit.
On top of that,
just bring it back a little bit though, back to the mid lane bit, because I think that's obviously a bit which a lot of people are going to focus on. Like, I think specifically what EG did well was isolating the strongest part of Jojo Upjohn's game and making the rest of it just like not really impact the game. It's just, you're going to have a strong laning phase. That's what you're here for. Everything else, everyone else is taking responsibility for the mid to late game stuff. Just laning phase. You have that sorted. That's you, right? That's what we're focusing on.
Inspired 100% did that, because you can see their gameplay changed. The team's game plan radically changed from like week like 6 and 7, like mid-split EG, is a very different animal to playoff CG. Like completely different beasts in how they want to attack the map, how they want to play around Jojo. And this was partly when Jojo was sometimes really spiking hard, because he would just have a really just good game in general. But he also would kind of run it down some of those games and went real quiet, remember? Where he was like, oh, I killed Bjergsen, they're on that high train, and then went silent, and it was kind of like, but I mean, I think that's a fair point. They could have done anybody, but they didn't. I mean, they went with Jojo. No. They doubled, tripled, quadrupled down at points. And you've got to admire the tenacity around that. Sadly, though, tenacity still isn't playing.
Fortnite Zoomer hands, man.
So I think what this means in terms of, because obviously this is like the LCS one, what does this mean for internationally? It means a couple of things. One, you don't have a super experienced international mid laner like someone like Jensen, which maybe gives you an X factor in international competition, because Jensen is one of the few NA residents that actually has done well at that level. From the mid lane anyway. But you're also getting this point where, and MSI as well, because he got to that finals in 2019. But I think when you're bringing in people like Jojo and Danny, they don't really have the same level of like regional baggage that NA has, which they tend to drag with them to most international events. But that's the nature of it, right? When you've lost for that long and your fan base gets quite jaded and quite spiky, personalities trying to pull off XYZ, I think that can be something which weighs down on a lot of the teams which do go into second round robins and end up kind of falling apart at the last minute. When you have newer players, there is a chance that they can kind of go out there and be a lot lower pressure on them. Now, you can get the other side of that, where you get G2 2016, where they go in and they're cocksure and they don't practice and they get fucking memed on for like 2 years straight until they beat RNG at MSI. But like, this shit happens. This shit happens.
It does. And I mean, just to kind of round that out, Vulcan, still, while he's been in the region for a relatively decent amount of time, he's not had a lot of international opportunities till now, really, over these last few years with the last bit of C9 and everything. Remember, 2020 was when he kind of finally got his opportunity. And remember, he gave that interview with Travis Gafford, which I absolutely loved, that he said, I was worried that I would leave C9 and then maybe never win a trophy again. And then I would be that player who never gets to win in front of a crowd, winning that and then kind of getting this. He doesn't have the same NA baggage. And you can say Inspired doesn't. And I mean, Impact is just... Impact's
been great for years. I mean, he's won a world championship and he's still at a really good level. I don't mean probably not world championship level necessarily, but he's still he's still an elite player.
In my heart, he is.
How hilarious would it have been if Rogue had gotten there through as well? We would have had EG versus Rogue Inspired. Because as far as I'm aware, there is some bad blood between Inspired and the team as well. From what we've heard in interviews, Fred says like, the teams just didn't fit, blah blah blah. Maybe I'm reading into that too much from what I've seen. I mean,
either way, it seems to have worked out for both teams in some ways. So, like,
that would have been great. Maybe we get that at Worlds.
Anyway, I mean, quick one as well. After this victory as well, Vulcan now has more LCS titles than Core JJ.
Core JJ, yeah.
You think how go?
So I'm just saying, this guy is real good.
He's doing all right. I would have put him in fully in that conversation. Not just yet. Maybe give him another 2. See what happens at that point. But we've taken like a long kind of look at the LCS thing, but obviously they're in a group which doesn't involve DFM. We'll get to that one later. That's gonna be fucking great. But
let's rotate it back around, and let's actually not start with the team that everyone's expecting us to start with, because let's actually start with the #1 seed in this group, because I think it's correct to go in the order that the seeds are in, and let's talk a little bit about T1.
Yep.
Because as someone that was more of a casual observer of this split of T1, I watched some of their high games. I watched some of their lower placing games, where when I'm saying lower placing, I mean against lower placing teams in the in the region. T1, I think, I can't remember the video I watched, but basically it is night and day. T1 game 1 in their best of 3s, and then game 2, game 3. I think best of 1 format is the best way to try and spike a game against T1, and the format is what's going to give every other team in this group maybe an opportunity.
You're not wrong.
T1 could go undefeated in this group, and I wouldn't also be.
I would expect them. I would expect them to. I think the The problem is, and I think this is the case particularly because of RNG being the team which are being sent from the LPL, T1 have the best laners in the tournament. And just having that solid foundation means that you have to punch up at this team. You need to be winning drafts. You need to be outplaying the early game. You need to be out skirmishing them. And those are things which they're all really fucking good at too. But just the fact that you have to beat them you have to beat them in that manner because you're unlikely to beat them through lanes, or at least, or rather, you're going to get full so far behind in the laning phase. Like, it puts this extra kind of obligation to outplay in the early game. Otherwise, they just... And then one mistake, obviously, we know against this team, tends to end the game. You make one mistake in mid or late game, and they just run away with the game. So it's going to be a very difficult situation for T1 to actually lose a game, I think.
I mean, the thing is, you have so many check marks to actually get a win against T1. You need to draft a comp that can at least go even in the early game. You need to have the hands to be able to take that comp and do that, and that is no easy feat. Honestly, you go back to the draft, the bonus kind of objective, there you go, is get a comp that wins lanes in the early game. So there's your bonus objective. You then need to not flip at Herald and lose it because T1 will smash you there. And T1 have done that consistently in the LC game, where teams have a weird habit of just fighting for Herald, come rain or shine. And then if all of that comes to play, you still need to play your mid and late games well enough, because otherwise they will start pulling off these smoke and mirrors where Carrier and Faker just make weird, dumb calls where they get into your base and teleport and end the game.
That's 5.1 things you just stated we can't do wrong.
No, hang on, wait, hang on, wait.
So this is
So this is the bit where I make a spicy prediction and you clip the shit out of this, and this is really, really funny. I genuinely think, off of that checklist, you know what T1's kryptonite is? The one champion that could really ruin them? Renekton.
Yeah.
Renekton might legitimately be the anti-T1 champion, right? So the logic is as follows: strong laning champion. It stops Zeus from just running off with the game. 2, peaks around Herald. You fight them at Herald, and it's not just a coin flip. You got that way thing. So if you think back to say, let's bring it back to if we bring it back to the LJL example, game 3 in the Juggernaut match between DFM and Sengoku. This was DFM setting up a Herald Renekton fight against Sengoku, who really wanted to fight around that objective. And they completely stomped them because you get 2 empowered abilities at a point where you're at level 8, level 9, or whatever, level 7-ish.
And you've got Dominus, You've
got Dominus on the rest of it. So you absolutely crap on people. So based on the checklist you just gave, might see a lot of Renekton versus T1 if you're planning to draft in regards to their play style.
Send it to the cathedral. See what the Pope LS says.
Well, no. We don't even need the Pope LS because LS has nothing to do with actual MSI. You know what? We actually spoke to someone. I did. You guys through me as did, because you also asked the questions. We asked the one and only Coach Kazu about this, and he actually believes there's a 50-50 chance against T1. So if we take the Coach Kazu's words verbatim, we could lose to Saigon Buffalo.
Who needs context? Just say that.
But who need? No. We don't need context here. 50% chance against T1, and I mean, just gonna go double down. In reality, though, T1 are the best team in the world. I think that's a blanket statement coming into this tournament. That is the general consensus. And the fact that Faker especially looks like he's peaking his Demon King again
somehow.
That is terrifying. I wish we got this version of Faker, this whole version of T1. I'm sorry, Teddy. I'm genuinely sorry to say this. I want this version of T1 versus Damn1 in 2020. Oh my god!
Yeah, that would have been great.
Worlds would have.
I mean, so we're getting close. We're getting close to that, right? Because Nuggery's coming back in summer. We might get that, but obviously,
still one of the best in the world.
So in terms of so we're kind of going through this group by group, blah blah blah, team by team. So so the T1 side of it. So we've basically looked at T1 as a team in the tournament. Now let's think about it from DFM's perspective, because this is a rematch for DFM of Worlds groups last year, where they got basically smashed by T1. There were a couple of bright moments where Arya solo kill Faker. That was all well and good.
3
but
minutes.
Across the board, effectively T1 just out-muscled and out-skirmished DFM. And I do think that DFM are less constrained than they were last year in terms of their flexibility in the early game is the big thing for me. I think last year they had a plan A, which was pretty good. Steel's pretty good at planning out a plan A and being so say, for instance, their early game versus EDG in the first time they faced them, where they had that good early game. who's on the Talon jungle, unique gank paths, all the rest of it. Once that plan A is out the window, though, last year they would struggle a little bit, and they wouldn't necessarily right the ship a little bit. So this happened a couple of times in notable games. I think it happened at MSI a little bit too. But I think this is something which this roster of DFM is better at. I think in the early game they have slightly more stable lanes. I think that Harp has really brought that to the bot lane. I think that Yahorong, as much as I love Arya, his early lane phase against strong international competition, and we've seen as the LCK, it has really been his failing point. I think Yahorong has more stability on that side, and that gives Steel more of a platform to do what he wants. And I think DFM have that ability now to kind of like absorb a bit more, a few more punches in the early game, and then kind of come out with a better response to it. So I think that might help them specifically in the T1 matchup. Also, the other thing is Ebby is on the form of his life. That will nullify Zeus a bit. So I think in terms of the DFM T1 matchup, it's not as bad as it was last year. Still pretty bad, but it's still not as bad as it was last year. So that just putting that into context.
When we had to play against the down one Kia in 2021, we almost beat them with Kazu, support, and like all this other stuff. One seed, down one, T1, basically the same team, basically the same thing. This time we've got Harp instead of Kazu. Kazu says he doesn't really care about playing half the time. He wants to be a coach. He wants to be the best coach in Japan. I think he's proving that to a pretty high extent now at this point. Maybe the greatest coach Japan has ever seen. Actually, probably up there. I mean, and he's a Japanese coach, so it's like, I mean, Sam,
I'm back.
Please, we'll take this last point, and then we'll move on to the Saigon Buffaloes, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I realize I'm muted Discord and not actually the OBS Ninja, so you probably just heard me coughing into the mic anyway, which
probably.
I realize so I apologize to people for that. Quick one for audio listeners. So obviously, the group, if you don't know it, is T1
please, yes.
Saigon Buffaloes from second seed from VTSU to Southeast Asia Games, weirdness. So the actual winners of the split game are going later. A's from, I think that's the LLA, isn't it? If I remember correctly. And then, of course, Destination Focus Me. I agree with what Al's saying. I hear what you're saying as well, Lexi. I also think there is a world where the fact that Harp is a really good laner. He's actually very good at playing for lane in a way that wasn't necessarily Gang's. It wasn't necessarily what you put as Gang's priority. He wasn't a bad laner.
He'd bring it out every so often, but yeah.
But he was much more of a skirmisher, a roamer, a team fighter, that kind of play. You'd have him on Alistair finding crazy flanks and 4-man headbutt, not pulse kind of deal, rather than like lane dominance. Harp actually does provide that, and it's hopefully given Utapon a breath of life to play lane a bit better, which is really necessary against Gumayushi and Carrier, for example. Yep. I also think that if you're looking into that T1 matchup, while it's never really bitten T1 that much, we have seen Zeus get murdered early a few times where he's been a little over aggressive on things like the Jason stuff and die a few times. He's never been put out of a game because T1 have been really good at finding ways to get him back into the game, getting to 2-3 items, and he's still Jace with those amounts of items in a meta where people are squishy enough that you still hurt with shock blasts and stuff.
Yep.
But Ebby is incredibly experienced. He's played against a lot of incredible top laners over his time. We saw, at the MSI last year, where you could actually draft to play Urgot into Gangplank and murder that, play Akali into certain matchups and smash through that, and try and snowball through top. And I think with Ebby's champion pool right now, there's a world where maybe you could try and say, okay, Unipon and Harp are strong enough laners to not get completely knocked out the door. Again, there's a lot of copium going on here. There's a lot of the 5.1 plan I gave to people earlier on to how do you even get to play an even game against T1 earlier on. All of that still has to be true. But if you can have your bot side hold even and then just play hard through top and just destroy it, you could play on the international inexperiences and try and play.
So just one quick cut in here, because I was chatting. So I was chatting with Kelsey Moser actually, because she reached out to ask about DFM, and so it's just like, hey, you got any VODs you particularly recommend watching, and also for the way this my open opinion.
We will
kind of
be
thing.
talking about DFM as whole.
Sure.
Later,
Sure. But just in terms of but particularly in terms of VODs you want to watch, probably just the playoff ones of DFM. Regular season was a bit all over the place and a lot of caveats. But Kelsey Moser was like, 5 games in watching this, Harp's really good. Also, Ebby is really, really good. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of I'm glad it's not just me.
Not just us, yeah, exactly. Like, these guys are good.
Yeah.
We're like screaming from the high heavens. We're like, these guys are good. Kelsey Moser now approved. So certain LJL representatives might be going to the LCS. We're sad for this poaching, but we're happy to give a second region, first region talent. It's just what we do here.
Yeah.
Saigon Buffaloes, gentlemen.
Yes.
So, Sam, have you done any writing on this to fully explain the story? Or
Yeah, well, I've not done any writing, but I have been keeping abreast of this. So here is the situation as it stands. And if you want a really in-depth look at what's been going on, seriously go and chat, talk to, see the content that the VCS English guys have put out. They're under the Twitter handle. That's Carrix, that's Mabinogi, that's Yulway. That whole crew, Milky Cereal, I Spoods, Clockwork, a lot of them. They're amazing. They know the region super well. They are our senpais in the unofficial broadcasting, even if we now think better than them, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The rivalry continues. But the long and short of it effectively is that this year is the Asian Games. And there's a couple versions of this, so do bear with me. Specifically, the Asian Games are happening for Korea and China and stuff. That's what we're hearing about, all the Korean teams going towards that. It's T1 plus various people and all the randomness with Casper there. But on top of that, below that is the Southeast Asian Games, which feed into the Asian Games as a whole. So it's kind of like its own kind of competition that will then feed on into a wider Asian Games on top of it. And this is a really big deal
it's a prestigious event,
and for national pride, and there is a lot of national pride on the line between a lot of these various Asian countries.
And participating countries they rotate between participating countries to host the event and stuff too. So it's a pretty big thing between, from my understanding of it.
Yeah, it means a lot, to the point where, for example, the Chinese fans consider it more prestigious to win that than MSI. For Korea, if you win that, you are exempted from military service, which you don't get for winning MSI or Worlds. And
same
so
for
there is
a lot of the regions that are playing in the SEA Games, like mandatory service for Vietnam, I believe is a thing. That you can postpone it for certain regions. Somewhere like Singapore is mandatory. You can get out by winning this because it is seen as that kind of same prestigious event. So it's very relevant as well for other reasons because it is that prestigious. I want to just double down on what you're stating, Initialise. Like it is important to the people and players.
Yeah, so to the Western audience who might not have any idea, it feels like, is this like Commonwealth Games or something? It's like, basically. But add the value of it way higher. Like people really value this. Effectively, what happened was the Vietnamese region will be sending a League of Legends team, which is one of the games that is playing part of this competition for various reasons. What they are sending is the first place team from, I believe it was actually the regular season. It was decided long before the finals.
They actually played a tournament.
Yeah, it was a qualifier.
That was a tournament. That's what it was.
Yeah.
So it was. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was after the regular season or whatever. But
I'm not sure when it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Either way, it was decided long before the finals, and GAM pretty handily won that. So they were going one way or another. And that basically meant, even if GAM won, the VCS playoffs, became first place team. They had an incredible split, by the way. So it seemed like all but guaranteed they went. Oh, I think they actually ended up undefeated as well. They called the T1.
Yeah, they were. So they lost in best of ones, but I believe they only lost 2 games in the regular season, something like that, and then they lost 1 game in the finals, and that was it.
Yeah, so they had an insane performance over the course of the season, and they won the split, but they were not going to go to MSI because they were already booked in to go to the Southeast Asian Games and potentially go through that to then join in the full Asian Games, having won that. And it's a really big deal for Vietnam as a whole. And that is a very big, and of course that meant a lot. And it meant they would not be going to MSI. That meant in the end that it would be the second place team that would be going to MSI. So Saigon Buffalo are that team. They are not the winners of the VCS regular season. They are not the winners of the playoffs, but they are the second best team pretty clearly from the VCS. But they were also pretty obviously a step below, maybe 2 steps below GAM, who were on another level for the whole of the region. And however good Saigon Buffalo are, honestly, there's been some really bright spots from this team. They aren't necessarily at the level of what we've seen from GAM in the past.
Yeah,
I mean, it's quite difficult with a lack of international history from this team over the last couple of years because of Corona and stuff to gauge exactly how good is this team because of all these reasons.
Okay, yes, there's a lot of stuff with that. Yeah, I will say that it feels like a similar situation to DFM, Rascal Jester, Sengoku in terms of we think that Rascal Jester, Sengoku are actually pretty good teams, right? If you set them internationally, they probably wouldn't like completely slip up and win 0 games, blah, blah, blah. But they are like 1 or 2 steps behind DFM on a large level. Even though they went to 5 games in the finals, that's still an opinion that I hold. But you look at that over in the VCS, I think that's even more accentuated because GAM were that dominant.
Yeah, and to really emphasize this point, I think Team Secret is also a legitimate contender in the VCS.
That's fair. Yeah,
they are well and truly the 2nd/3rd best team in the region. I think they're best of 5. If you want to get a good series where Saigon Buffaloes were pushed, but they actually were victorious, go watch their quarterfinal, their semi-finals match where they were the 2nd seed. They play against Team Secret. It's a full 5-game banger. It is a banger. It's messy VCS games, but I mean, you get to see Saigon Buffalo victorious. You get to see what they're really good at. You get to see some of their VCS-ness, I think is the most polite way to say it, where sometimes you don't need to take the fight. You really didn't have to. There's no reason for there's no rhyme, logic, or anything. You can't just skill test like your EG every single okay, and we've lost. What a surprise. You're 4 levels down. I could have seen it coming. But I mean, that's VCS lovely things. Saigon Buffaloes, though, fall into being a Sengoku Rascal Jester comparison, though, for me. I'm coming
from
back
our
to
perspective,
your point,
from our perspective,
I am coming back around. I watched that finals. I believe all of us have watched at least some aspect of their finals. And Initialise, to come over to you, because I think it's best to throw it back over and then we can go back around in a circle as we're doing.
There you go.
Where's the bright spot for the Buffaloes in this group? Because I think they're fighting up. I feel like they're punching up a little bit here for me.
So, full disclosure, I don't have the best read on this team as yet. I do a little
I can answer that if you like.
But I think as far as I can say, I think I was impressed from Hazmed from what I'd seen. And I think Shogun is pretty good in the team fights if he can get to there. But Hazmed didn't have the best finals. So that puts me in a bit of a like, I liked this guy. I don't know whether I like him anymore. Froggy has also massively stepped up from when he was getting memed on over the last couple of years, and
for not being able to CS,
So there was a running joke in the VCS English community that Froggy's CS is being stolen by Levi, which is how Levi was getting so far ahead in jungle, and he's gotten a lot better as well. So real credit. But I hesitate to give a full read on this team, so I will pass this one over. With the full disclosure, I've been a little distracted with other stuff going on, and I still need to do my research.
Yeah, no, I got this. Yeah, so I think that Saigon Buffalo are a really solid drafting team. I think that they often find themselves in situations where they get a lot of advantages from draft, which is not something which actually a lot of teams internationally do consistently. I think that Saigon Buffalo, I think if you look at game 2, where they beat GAM. You look at that game.
It was game 2.
I think that was the cannon, right? And this is actually okay. So again, like I really want to like bring this back to like a DFM perspective in terms of Saigon Buffalo, because that's where our expertise lies. Because we have an understanding that the LJL, VCS, and the PCS have been scrimming for a great many years at this point. They've influenced each other an awful lot. We saw this back in 2020. You look back to the 2020 summer split and then into the playoffs too. We saw a lot of Pantheon support, which was a VCS special. V3 picked that up in their winning run. There was also a like set support. This was back when Phase Rush was super broken on supports. But then suddenly VCS and LJL teams would take Aftershock, pick a Phelios out of meta and lane swap with the Scion on weak side. And this is something that we saw in the LJL. We saw it a little bit kind of between a couple of regions and different scrims and stuff like that. So we know that the teams have been picking up things from each other. And one thing that we saw in the LJL finals and the VCS finals between GAM and DFM was them pick up a pushing AD bully top. So something like Camille's not so much pushing, but it's still like the bully dive threat. And then or stuff like Jace or Lucian. And then you'd pick Nocturne. And then you'd pick a global mid like TF Rise or something like a Vex as well, was another kind of example of this. And you would just hyperdive top. And what Saigon Buffalo did in game 2 when they won was pick like a huge anti-dive comp, and it's like, you actually can't kill anyone, and your top laner you're diving into is a cannon who can build like stopwatch early and then just like survive a lot of those dives. So and that was like a very intelligent read from me from the Buffaloes very early. And I think like if they can get that read on other teams and prep very well, I think they will be a threat, because I think when they've got a good read on a team, they've been pretty good at picking apart their win conditions. But even then, we know that these teams influence each other so much. DFM versus Saigon Buffaloes is going to be a really interesting matchup, just in terms of like how much can they eke out in terms of these drafting advantages, because these teams do play quite similarly to each other in the top end. My worry for the Saigon Buffaloes, though, is that outside of this game, Hasbid played against some of this top dive global stuff a little bit more and got absolutely just smashed. He was playing way too far up, playing under turrets he couldn't be under. So that game 2, great performance from Hasbid. I think if he plays anything but that game 2, though, he's going to get absolutely slaughtered by Zeus and by Ebby. I think that you've got these teams which can play very hard through top, and if the Buffaloes don't give him tools to completely outdive, that's going to be a big worry point for me at this tournament. So that's my first read on them.
I mean, absolutely. I can't see actually. I actually don't think the Saigon Buffaloes have a great matchup into Detonation Focus Me. I don't
think so either. Yeah.
I think how Detonation Focus Me prep for their matches. The fact that we even heard from Kazu, he says, yeah, just because of what we showed in our finals and semis, or rather Juggernaut match, we're not going to do any of that unless it actually calls for us to do that. Like if that is the correct thing at that exact moment. Otherwise, we're not going to do any of that. TF Nocturne is done for DFM now. By the way, unless it is,
it was great into Sengoku.
Exactly, yeah. Unless it's exactly the
I think it's great into Buffalo
to do in that exact draft, in an exact match. Kazu isn't going to draft that for for DFM. So like, I'm very worried for the Saigon Buffaloes against DFM. I think this is a great matchup for us. I think our top side is going to absolutely do it. I think Yaharong is going to be a stable rock.
He's very stable, yeah.
And then I think we actually have the edge in the bot lane. So I think we've got
I do think that the one caveat is BNJ is very good. BNJ is very good. I think that there's one way that the Buffaloes take a lot of unexpected advantages, even though they're more cerebral than some of the VCS teams in terms of like they do have these big drafts. They understand stylistically how their comp wants to play a bit. And this is like one of my issues with the VCS in general is that sometimes it feels like they're playing regardless. They're playing without necessarily understanding the champions that they're playing. And they'll be like, that person's out of position, we can get them. And you realize you got like champions which are just not fit for doing that. But I think the Buffaloes are better at that. They're better at just saying like, look, nope, this is what our comp does. We want to do this. And I think that will serve them better on this stage. But I think that BNJ is still like the one real wild card where he'll turn up in places where you don't expect him to and win skirmishes for his team.
Yeah, and I'll say for obviously that's probably for Owner, that's probably less of an issue because actually I think some of the LCK junglers are, particularly if they've had chance to prep, can pull off some really weird early pathings options. Canyon notoriously very good at that, for example, and he can certainly just take over games from doing that. Even if you do get a 10k gold lead on Nidalee and then fail to execute in the late game. Let's not talk about that game versus Genji. Hey, but so I think that's an issue for Owner, but for Steel, I don't think he's been pushed that hard by the LJL junglers. There's been some good moments, but I don't think
this is why we think the LJL jungle pool is kind of in a very awkward spot at this moment in time, because it's kind of Steel is the best, and then we've got in theory
Hashimetra on Volibear, and that's
Once has played well. Once has played well.
Have his best player well.
But like Once feels like the second best player in the jungle.
And then Flawless has his moments, but that team as a whole has so many issues.
I mean, Blank is not having a good split.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you know, there are players who you can see have hands and have moments.
Yeah.
But I don't see the consistent elite level of jungler, I think is the way to put it. And I think internationally that is something BNJ could potentially do to the likes of Steel, who, while I think has had a good split, has been facilitated by having the best team. And obviously the jungling, you know, when your team is just winning is so much easier. And that's not necessarily a guarantee at an international level, let's be real. And, you know, I feel like BNJ could also potentially do that to Dimitri from A's as well, potentially.
Well, let's actually move on to A's, because I think that's fair. I've only watched the finals, I'm not going to lie. My experience around the LLA team is pretty limited. What I saw of the finals was probably the worst finals I watched out of every MSI team that I've watched going in. So
It wasn't great.
I will. Oh God, actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I'll wait until we're on Group B. But yeah, this was probably the worst best of 5 series I watched. The level of play also wasn't particularly impressive to me, and I think I'm pretty happy from a DFM perspective that I got this team as my 3rd seed.
Okay, so what I'd rather do for this team then, because I think so for me, like cards on the table, I think that A's are not coming in particularly strong. I think that you know, like I said, the level of play wasn't as high as maybe it could be. So what I'd rather do is focus on some of the stories.
What we've seen, at least from the past, from the LLA.
Like in terms of like the most valuable way we can spend this time in terms of what I think of this team being drawn into DFM's group is figure out the connection between them, because you know, last year we had an LLA team in our group. We had Infinity, and we went 1-1 with them. They beat DFM with the casual lineup in their first international game, and that was like, oh shit, wow. Before that, LLA has also done some damage to DFM before. Think back to 2019. It was Isurus versus DFM that beat DFM in a 60-minute slugfest to knock us out of the tournament.
Don't remind
me. Back in the plans. So in terms of like high profile, and then also, but basically what happens is every international tournament somehow ends up there's this LJL LLA again. 2020 Worlds, actually similar thing. V3 versus Rainbow 7 in that case.
Yeah, it was Rainbow 7,
which it was V3's only win at the tournament. They ended up winning that one game, and the rest of it was a hot mess for that team. So we've had a lot of, as far as regional conflicts go for teams which don't get international games, like we get one team playing 4 to 6 games internationally twice a year. That's like not many chances to actually match up and get relevant games against these teams. Somehow the LJL and the LLA actually gets a lot of good game time against each other. So that's one thing.
And can you believe that pundits don't want more, pundits want less games for minor regions?
No, it's stupid. If you, like, the problem is you're basically just, at that point, it's a token effort to have minor regions in a competition. And at that point, it's like, no, if you're not part of these major regions in the world, you don't get to play League of Legends.
Yeah,
like, which I think is hugely fucking problematic. I think that, yes, I agree, you're putting lower value games on the majority of the viewer base's radar, and sometimes you're going to lose a lot of numbers for that. I agree. I think that's a problem, but I don't think you can cut off the entire major region the minor region system.
Yeah, I wanna step in on that, because I see where Alex is coming from, and I somewhat agree. But here is my issue: a lot of these points are coming from an incredibly English, Anglo-centric viewpoint, and it is basically saying, oh, because we are fans of the LEC or NA, or to an extent, say Korea or China, other fan bases don't matter, and that is incredibly stupid. This is an international event with an international viewer base. Are you telling me that Brazil and LATAM don't have viewer bases? Are you dumb? Like, these VCS has huge viewer bases. Like, you can go through however many of these regions and realize there are actually very significant viewer bases.
LFL, Prime League, LVP.
Absolutely.
It almost doesn't matter what the count of players or people watching is. Do you not think the LCO was so fucking happy when they got that win over Cloud9 in the Rumble stage?
Absolutely.
Do you not? I don't care. Do you think they give a fuck? Like, do you actually know Aussies? Like, by the way, like, do you think they really give a fuck if they lose?
I have Aussie family.
And then smack them down once they don't.
Right. The quality of gameplay is bluntly somewhat immaterial.
Thank you.
It's nice, and you'll get that higher on into the competition. But
for the playing stage,
earlier on, earlier on, I very much like having this mix of incredible, like, top tier teams with lower tier teams, because actually there's a lower tier team, like, from around various regions, because that's part of the point of a competition like this. And honestly, that's part of the privilege of having seeding as well. There's a reason when you look at something like the Rugby World Cup, for example, New Zealand always ends up with some no-name team who are like 15th in the world and are like going to get run over by the All Blacks, who will come onto your stadium, do the hacker, and terrify the absolute shit out of every player on the field.
So this is what happened with
the privilege of being the best team in the world.
So this is what happened?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I don't know if Sam had like an extended point he wants to make. But this is what happened with like, so speaking of the All Blacks, with like the USA national rugby team, where they happily had 10 tries run over them and like people like kicking things backwards to like do show kicks and shit like that. But it's just a spectacle, right? It's just being able to be part of that ecosystem is very big for them. And the thing is that like, I agree that currently at the moment, minor region versus major region face-offs, or particularly minor versus minor region, end up being quite meh at times. Like particularly last year at MSI, people have I think people have a lot of not bad blood, but a bad view of the MSI format because of what happened last year with the 3-team group where we lost a pool 2 team in the VCS. I think that ended up being a lot of low value games because it was the quad round robin. But I think that this format, like we said, I mean, this format allows for really big matchups like DFM or an upcoming minor region team to finally face off against a major region's first seed. And it's only a couple of games. I think that the Rumble stage and the knockout stage ends up getting... I think maybe that needs to be revamped from MSI's perspective. But I think that the group stage is actually in a pretty okay spot for what's happening with MSI.
I'll be honest. Also, I think the Rumble stage is when most people, if they only care about top tier quality, watch that. Yeah, no, but they should just watch from there. Quit. I will do this every episode of the podcast until I see people stopping doing this. Stop shitting on minor regions and let those fans enjoy it. Okay? Like, I'm just so sick of pundits just continuously going, fuck, I don't want to watch 4 games. I don't want to. They keep thinking Group C is like the old system, by the way. Like, none of them seem to look at the wiki. They all keep going, I don't want to see 4 games. It's double.
Double.
Shut the fuck up. They're not going to play 4 games against LCS. I mean, actually, I don't think that would go well for LCS, but we'll get onto that later. Yeah, LLA. I'll be honest, lads. I don't want to bash on LLA because I think that's
which is why I wanted to go on the stories, right? Like if they turn up, that's great. But let's focus on the stories for this one. There's a large connection between LJL and LLA. We've had a lot of players go back and forth. We've got some cool history there in terms of the games we've played. I'm excited to continue this rivalry, even if the LLA for me are coming in as underdogs in this matchup.
Agreed. And also, let's hope that LJL can actually get the 2-0 this time because they probably should have done it last time. They probably should have done it last time, but they lost that opening match and that actually gave the LLA fans, rightly, a lot of hope.
We have never 2-0'd the LLA when we've been grouped with them, and we've been grouped with them a lot.
No. No.
Time to do it. Gentlemen, let's talk about the actual Seed 2 team here in this group. Oh yeah, I'm gonna get some hate from our brothers from the VCS for saying that, but Detonation, focus me.
Woo! Whoop, whoop.
I mean, we've already talked about them a fair amount already in this episode. Let's just double down on them. Detonation, focus me. This might be on par or maybe better than previous iterations of Detonation, focus me. This one is definitely better version-wise
than MSI.
Than the one we sent last MSI. Yeah. So... while we're not giving predictions at this moment in time, we'll be doing that at the end of this episode. DFM looks so adaptable, so modular, so pick and choose how they want to play against each team. And it's very plug and play. Saigon Buffalo, so let's just try and beat them in the draft. And we know we have better hands. Okay, we'll just play that game. Against a team like A's, the LA representative, I think they can just beat them by just being like the better team and finding out. I think this is a Kazu one. I think Team A's is just a Kazu theory craft, and they should hopefully just trust in that, similar to what they did against Sengoku and Rascal Jester. Yeah, best of one's a bit different though, so we'll see. T1's going to be the difficult one, lads, and I think that's where we spent most of this episode already on T1 DFM because we had to theory craft that one a little bit. So, yeah, the padding of sweat Initialise, I think, is beautifully sums up the situation.
I am excited to see DFM at this championship. I think, in my eyes, and I think we're largely in agreement on this, but this, in my mind, is the most complete-looking roster that DFM ever sent internationally. The LJL as a whole actually have sent internationally. I think we've got a very modular way of playing. It's a really good way of putting it, Lexi. They can play through pretty much every lane. They've got a lot of different play styles. I think Harp has been really important to allowing a more lane-dominant bot side. Ebby's playing a lot more champions, which is really good for the flexibility in top. Yarhog's very stable and doesn't ask for as many resources in terms of attention from other players as Aria did, which allows a little bit more flexibility in playing to side lanes a bit more. All of that is good news, and I think DFM should feel pretty happy about that. I'll add a couple caveats in the fact that DFM were largely uncontested in terms of their mechanical might in the LJL. And I've also mentioned that, I'm a little Steel internationally, again, will be an interesting one because I sometimes feel jungling internationally can be, it's a different beast. And you're going up against very, very different junglers and teams that might push your lanes in. You won't have the same level of priority potentially.
It's a difficult one, right? Do you think they'll actually get lane priority?
Well, that's just it. I feel
right?
like DFM, there's no guarantee internationally, right? Like Saigon Buffalo are good. They've got good players, right? They've got good laners. We talked about Hazmed. Even if he overshoves, he's pretty good, at least in an isolated situation about playing a top lane. Froggy's seriously improved. I still think Shogun's not bad in terms of being able to get himself into team fights and the rest. BJ's phenomenal. All of that stuff. You look at A's one Latam alone has been one of the LLA representatives for a very long time. He's been, I think he was one of the team. He was on that roster that Rainbow 7 roster that went out ahead of V3 and stuff, that kind of deal. There is experience in this team, and we've talked about T1. And that means that you can't guarantee lane priority, which means that jungling is very different to how you've been used to playing it. And all of these things make you go, okay, there are some caveats that need to be checked
out. Yeah, it is. Alex, what about you?
Hello.
DFM?
Yes. Well, I mean, like I said, most of what I've been trying to, I think, at the end of the day, I think that the value which, we can bring to this is our view of DFM on the other teams in this group, which is why every time we've gone through one of these teams, I'm like, what does DFM think about this? Rather than them in isolation. So I think with T1, I think we're in a better spot than we were last year. It's still a hard spot. It's still rough. So I would expect a 0-2 there. I think that, I think that we're in a better position than we were at Worlds last year against them because of the reasons which I said while we're over them. I think Saigon Buffalo, I think that outside of BJ, I think the rest of the team is stylistically something that we're set up very well to deal with as DFM. But yeah, I could see that going 1-1. I could also see that being a 2-0 to DFM. I think I think that might go to a tiebreaker, actually. I think that, again, Saigon Buffalo are not a weak team. They're not a weak team. I do think that DFM are stylistically set up to potentially punish someone like Hazmed if he doesn't have the best read and doesn't have the best tools and draft to defend himself, because DFM have attacked top side really, really well. And then you look over A's and yeah, while the stories are there, I do think that A's are coming in as probably, I mean, obviously there was the argument about should have A's been a pool 3 team over DFM. They haven't changed the pool system for players teams this time around. And I feel like DFM are coming in on pound for pound heavier than them. I mean, I do hope that they show up. I hope that they give some good games. It's always fun to see minor regions succeed as an underdog. We've had that experience as the LJL. I want other regions to have that too. I would like it not to be at our expense, but I'd like for that to happen. So for me, I do think that DFM are coming in as formidable in this stage. We've heard stories about how after last Worlds, DFM were definitely on the radar a lot more in their region in terms of their practice partners. Hell, after they got into groups, they said, hey, wow, our practice partners are suddenly that much better. We're getting a lot more experience here. And obviously, they fell apart in groups, but the Worlds last year. But I think that this team has continued to rise in reputation within their region. I think that they've come in very coherent. I think they've come in with a better understanding of how they want to play the game. Not that they don't have their flaws, and I'm sure we'll revisit that when they show themselves at MSI, but I think they're coming in as a formidable team at this stage.
Well, and also coming back. That's a really big, important point for a lot of the international teams. It's like, okay, we've been scrimming you. A lot of these players on other teams won't pay attention to the actual record of DFM until they actually see, did they make it back or not? And making it back after you've been scrimming them, or just in general, seeing them last World, you played against them a bunch and then you didn't see them for 6 months. You come back and they go, oh, DFM are back. Okay. They were good last year. They got them better. And it's kind of that the repetition of seeing a team over and over. Previous LJL teams have had spikes, and then another team steps in for a little bit, and then spikes, and then another team kind of comes in. And remember, we are still paying for the sins of V3 as an LJL.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
We are still paying for those sins. So
2019 wasn't great either. So let's.
Well, that was the Isserus year. That was when we got dealt a heavy blow by them.
Yeah. So we are paying for those sins. However, 2021 was a breakout year, and let's hope that 2022 is an evolution year. We've had the breakout. Now let's evolve. Let's go to the next step. A team that keeps evolving, though, and they're better than DFM at doing it, because credit where credit's due. RNG. Holy shit. This team, lads, I'll be frank with you both. The finals was one of the most fun finals I've ever watched.
It was bizarre. It was wonderful.
It was fun. I can't say it was good. Like, I'm sure Monte Cristo had other words for that series, but for me, as a fan of League of Legends and just fun in general,
I would seriously suggest talking to Dagda and stuff about that. Dagda, because like, so one thing which people was, so I was actually chatting with, I was chatting with I think it was Ashin about this, because like the last couple of years have been so LPL dominant, and it's kind of like the casters have obviously very much fueled that too, and they're like, yeah, you know, we believe in our teams XYZ, and actually they've been paid off a lot for that. You know, they stood by those teams, and their calls were largely correct. But it's not like they're stupid. It's not like these guys on the broadcast don't know when their teams are also not good as well. It's just that they've not really had to say anything about that for the last couple of years, because LPL teams have been fucking good. So to hear like Dagda in, I think it was the V5 Top Esports series, saying like, look, if our teams are going to play like this, just hand the trophy to T1. That hits even more even harder, right? And to hear like their analysts be like, yeah, you know what, LPL's probably not looking so hot this year. That means a lot to me in terms of my understanding of their grasp on the region, you know. So yeah, lots of things to be worried about as RNG, but they're still going to be here as a top tier team.
Okay, so that's really, I think Al's covered it really well there and said, look, this team has come in with obvious flaws. Now, don't get me wrong, they seriously improved over the course of playoffs. We saw some good moments, but a lot of their series were 5-game extravaganzas. And I mean extravaganza in the sense of extravagant.
In the true extravaganza.
Yes. Where things were certainly exciting, but not always the highest level. And there were moments where the likes of Xiao, who absolutely popped off his Galio, of all things, was goddamn phenomenal. Gala looked a lot better again. But I still have my concerns about Wei and Bin in terms of their inconsistencies. Bin was this guy who was supposed to come in and allow Xiaohu to go back to mid and play the same role that Xiaohu did, and be this incredible top lane tour de force who would pull off the kind of gangplank barrels that send G2 fans into nightmares and sleepless nights for months to come. But it hasn't, at least in the regular season, was not as consistent as they would have liked. And Wei is still not a jungler he's not been Casa, if that makes sense. He's not necessarily been someone
Very
like...
few people ever are Casa.
Yeah, like I'm trying to remember JDG. It's not Kenvi, that's the 100 Thieves, guys. Someone rescue me, please.
Boogie? No.
No, JDG jungler. Come on.
Kanavi, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Kanavi, not Kenvi. There we go.
Kanavi.
Like, they're not the same people at all. There you go. You know,
Kenvi is an esports photographer, to my knowledge.
Isn't there also the 100 Thieves?
Oh, that's Kenzie. Sorry, Kenzie. That's Kenzie, not Kenvi.
Yeah, it's Kenvi. See, we're all getting confused. They're all different people.
Isn't there Kanavi as well that you could throw into that mix?
Well, no, that's who we're talking about.
Kanavi is JDG's jungler. That's who we're talking about.
I know. It all works.
Right. Anyway, and like there are obvious weaknesses in this, but then the thing is, sometimes this team is good enough in terms of like to play their way out of unfavorable situations. There were multiple times in the playoffs where we saw pretty insane stopwatch pace from Wei to buy a couple seconds for his team to catch up and suddenly turn fights around, which should never have happened. And it's like, that's not necessarily a play made from being mechanically clean. It's from being mechanically clutch. And they're very good at doing that as well. And they're still a very good team with incredible stress. Like Xiao, who's a god still. Ming and Gala have really stepped up as the split's gone on, etc., etc. It's just not flawless. You can see the cracks in this team in terms of if these aren't shored up or against a team that could expose them, it could be problematic. The question is, are the teams in their group good enough to do that? And I'm not sure about that yet. PSG Talon, what is it? It's PSG Talon, Wildcats from Turkey, and the Red Cannons from Brazil are the other teams in that group. PSG Talon are a good team, but I don't think they're necessarily at the level, I think.
We'll do predictions in a bit, mate. We'll do predictions later.
So
don't go too deep.
Don't
go too deep.
So my question then is, okay, so you can see that RNG perhaps are not as imperious they have been in previous years. I'm just not convinced until the Rumble stage that someone's going to be really able to expose them.
Okay, so if we move on to the next team, though, because I think we should probably like speed up a little bit in regards to these. So
go over to PSG Talon.
Yeah, so PSG, I think that they replaced them at jungle from last year, but they still have their top laner in the bot lane. So when you have Unified Kaiwing and Hanabi, you're still going to be a strong team. I think Kaiwing is an incredible player. I think that Unified and his ability to get resources in mid game, like he's not going to be as flashy as Doggo, which is of course the person who stood in for them as last MSI. I'm trying to remember.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think that Unified has been really looked down on, though, because he's not Doggo. And people are like, PSG, oh, is that the Doggo team? No, they were always a Unified team. And Unified and Kaiwing are a really good duo. So when you have Unified Kaiwing and you have Hanabi, this is always going to be a strong team. Now, from what I've seen, and I didn't watch nearly as much PCS as I did last year, because I've just been busy, been really busy.
Crazy. It's like
I do think that the mid jungle that they bring in aren't as high level as last year, or rather they're not as stable as last year. So I think that PSG, they weren't a fast-paced team last year. I don't think that's going to have been helped at all by the lack of stability if they want to keep playing that style this year. They did lose a series and had to go through a lower bracket. They did win the finals in a 5-game banger. That was pretty cool. It would have been hilarious to see Flying Oyster at an international event. That would have been a great team name.
Oh,
but
yes.
my read is PSG are coming from a highly underrated region. I think PCS is a strong region. Hell, last year in World Groups, PSG probably should have gone 1-1 with RNG. I think it was like one moment where things fell apart around the Baron in their first game against them in World Groups. But I do think that PSG are coming in as a strong team. I just don't think they're as strong as last year, where I rated them very highly. So I think actually PSG and RNG are in somewhat similar positions, where I don't think they're coming in at like top historical form, but they're still strong teams and you can't write them off at all.
I do plan to send a DM over to Pyrotechnics at some point and sit down and interview him.
Pyro will fill you in, but the man knows.
Because I think I want to find out the information, because in my head I have my assumption that I should just assume about PSG Talon, but I've not watched any of their games, so I'm not gonna pretend to be a pundit and be like, I think this will happen, because I don't know. The team, obviously, nameplates that I recognize echo everything Nymaera just said. Team looks good. Yeah, they have good game time and good stats. That's all I've seen from them. So I don't want to go any further. Sam, have you got anything else you'd want to add?
I think Al covered the unfounded, like, oh, it's Unified thing pretty well, because I really rate that guy.
No, Unified's fucking good. He's great.
Yeah, we're the two best AD carries in the region by a long, long way, and he and Kaiwing are really, really good. So I think PSG Talon should be a good team. I just don't know them.
They have a comparable bot lane to what RNG have. I think they have comparable.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they are really good players. There is a world where, like, obviously,
I don't think the rest
LMS now, PTS Talent does get stolen over to the LPL pretty similar. I mean, Doggo got stolen by the LPL and did a pretty good job. Obviously, he was starting over Uzi of all people.
No, I think they're
probably LPL level talent. I just don't know if they're top level LPL talent. If that makes sense.
I'll be honest. I think the difference between top, like first LPL team and sixth LPL team is not as large as a lot of Western fans.
There's a lot of depth.
Oh no, LPL has ridiculous level of talent. Like
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and they have like 10 teams in playoffs, and they're all taking games off each other. It's crazy. Yeah, I mean, do I think that Unified and Kaiwing are at the same level as Gala and Ming? In a 2v2 sense, no, I don't think so. I think LPL 2v2s are like just disgustingly strong.
That's fair.
I think that there are areas of the game where you get towards like mid game, and Kaiwing's mid game playmaking and Unified's ability to position very well in those moments is strong. I just think in a 2v2 headbutt, I don't think Unified and Kyron come out on top versus
You know what?
Gala
I think
and
you
Ming.
guys correctly called me out. I will concede the
Like,
point.
they're good.
Maybe,
They're fucking good.
Maybe
The LPL bot
RNG
lanes
is
are
not
very
quite
good.
yeah, RNG probably isn't quite the team to make that bold statement because what they were second, right, in the whole season.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let me say I think a fairer comparison is like. Oh god, do I really want to compare Jackie Love and Mark? Oh god, that's
Mark's been phenomenal.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, oh.
Jackie Love has definitely been a bit more hit and miss as Jackie Love, but like,
you know what?
Actually,
really
no.
Good. You know what I think is more comparable? You go Billabong Gaming, where Doggo actually ended up with Chris. I think that is a similar level bot lane to what PSG Talon's bot lane is. If not, maybe they actually might have a slight edge in sometimes. I think it's that close. I'm forcing this narrative. I'm forcing this bullshit point that I got myself in. You guys correctly called me out.
It's a bold call.
I need to now double back down to a more reasonable spot.
They are a good bot lane, and they've obviously shown up at international events before and been largely pretty widely praised. So I see your argument, and I at least consider it valid, even if I'm not sure I agree.
I'll take it. Let's go on to our representatives, though, from Turkey. That is the Istanbul Wildcats, returning once again with Holy Phoenix, man. If players like Udapon and Ebi become stalwarts at Worlds and MSI, Holy Phoenix for Turkey is right up there with a full Turkish team, which is actually a really cool thing. Another thing about the Saigon Buffaloes is that it's all Vietnam team. So all Turkish team. I'll be honest, lads. I watched a bit of this finals and then I had to turn it off. I wasn't impressed. Yeah. What about you guys? Who wants to come first in?
I mean, okay. So again, I think it's like so this is like another conversation I've had with a couple of people, and I very much appreciate this point of view. Is that I am not an expert on TCL. I haven't really prepped for them because I'm not on the MSI broadcasts, and also they're not part of DFM's group. So I had other shit to do, and I itemized my time effectively. So there's part of me just been like, meh, whatever. But like, I'm not going to pretend to be a expert on the gameplay of this region. Now, when you do have players like Holy Phoenix and Farfetch who have been around since fucking forever, like, I'm excited to see them play. Don't get me wrong. I mean, hell, some of the very first games, which, I mean, I started watching in Season 4, so my first live World Championship that I watched, because I only watched highlights from Season 3 Worlds. Like, what got me into the game was watching Faker at Season 3 Worlds, but I didn't watch it live. Like,
good
going into Season 4 Worlds, Holy Phoenix was there. Like, this guy has been around. I believe he was on Dark Passage, right? Yeah, Dark Passage, and he was there at Season 4 Worlds. So this guy has been around for fucking forever, and then finally made it back to international events last year. I think that was his first time back, actually, with Istanbul.
After a long time, yeah.
After a very long time. So there's a lot of history. There's a lot of like experience kind of hidden beneath this screen, and you get this sometimes in minor regions. Like, we have Ebi, we have Utapon, who've been around since forever. Holy Phoenix has also been around for a very long time. You look at some other players and they've been around for just ages. What I will say though about TCL is that ever since they made that super team with like GBM and a whole load of people in 2020,
Kakao and GBM, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe that was the case. Like, they had a strongish showing in play-ins, but then they didn't quite make it out. And that was kind of a moment where TCL like, because they ended up being Mad Lions, right? They ended up being Mad Lions because Armor on that roster. And that was like that was crazy, awesome, wow, big result. Nama, all the rest of it, right? I mean, TCL had a really bright moment there. And I do think they have better individual talent on the whole in terms of like the stock of Turkish players on the international stage has been fairly high. A lot of European talent. I mean, hell, you got Broken Blade, right? He used to play there. Camps used to play in the TCL. There are tons of players who used to play over there. But right now, it feels like they are kind of in a similar situation to, say, someone like the Ultra Leaguer and the ERLs, for those of you who've been watching like our EU Masters content, where they produce so much talent, but they can't keep any of it for long enough to make anything beyond momentary super teams, and they haven't really had that this year either. So I think that while I very much respect the TCL as a region, I respect the way that they build talent, this is not a team I expect to massively blow up the pool 1 and pool 2 teams.
what I'll say, and I think Al's got a really good read on that. And I think that's very valid. Look at the likes of, they lost Broken Blade, they've lost the likes of Closer. Like the list goes on and on. 113 even is Turkish. He left from TCL to join Karmine Corps. Like all of these kind of deals. And even with that in mind, the Wildcats roster is actually pretty veteran. They've been together for a long time. Like Starscreen's been there since 2019. So is Ferret. Sarah and Holy Phoenix have been there since 2020. So this is now their second year. Farfetch is the only new addition to this roster who joined at the beginning. So there is still a lot of like tenure on this organization for the players, even if the region as a whole has been in a bit more turmoil. So I'll add that caveat in that there is still like a fair amount of veterancy and synergy this roster has built up. And that should give people some hope if they're TCL fans, because you're right. The likes of Holy Phoenix and Farfetch are really good players. Saren's had their moments as well, right? Like if you can make this a bot snowball game, the veterancy and the talent can make it happen.
This is that exact same team we saw last MSI from them.
Pretty close. Farfetch is new. Farfetch.
No, he was there. He's there. I'm on Farfetch's profile
he just
right now.
rejoined. That's what he did. He rejoined.
Right,
So he left and rejoined. I think is what it is.
Yeah. Because it says he left in November and then joined back in January. So
okay, so he went free agent. Yep.
Complete run back. They went 1-5. I'm going to remember that that scoreline for my predictions. Let's talk about a finals I did actually watch in full, and we actually have access to experts who speak our language, and they are very easily accessible because guess what? CB Law English guys do an incredible amount of work over there.
They really do.
Some of them even bleed into our little stuff sometimes.
Random mini caster out there. We love you, buddy.
Love it.
Yeah.
The Red Canids made it. Back at it again. I don't want to make my hot take first off the mark. So has anyone else here watched that series?
Well, I didn't watch that series, no. But I mean, I remember from Worlds last year. And obviously, it might not have been Red Canids, but we had Turkey versus Brazil in MSI last year as well. And it was, as you said, Ismail Wildcats who finished at 1-5, and Pain Gaming finished just above them at with two wins. So they did actually have a rare spot of success from. I mean, CBLOL have not typically been the most successful region. I do think that Red Canids have been a bit more of a breath of fresh air. I think that is Grafthar. I think I remember his name being. I remember his name kind of popping up and about the place, and I was like, okay, I'll keep an eye on this guy. Now I do think there's a cool little rivalry developing between TCL and CBLOL, and we'll see how it goes this time. I'd love to see that go into something bigger, because again, these minor region links, we know how it's important for us with like LJL LLA, LJL VCS PCS in terms of like the scrum bubble. Like, I'd love for this to start building up between these regions too, because it just has that extra kind of spice to certain matchups, which we can kind of tag onto and put that into our cast and into our broadcast and into our content.
Yeah, I'll add this one in here as well, because I helped interview Krebsdal last year at Worlds.
You did, yeah.
And obviously, he basically became the starting mid laner for this team during their playoffs run last year.
Yes.
He basically came in, and they went from being nobodies who were not playing well to running up the gauntlet to win the whole thing. Part of the back of being really good. Like, he really facilitated his team well. So I'm pretty excited to see what this guy has become after he had, I believe they still got Avenger on the roster. So obviously, he's still a mid laner there. They've got that flexibility. Cheetan, their bot laner as well, is someone who has been around the scene for a while and is pretty well guarded. So there's stuff here, and some good storylines to keep following. Namely, keep an eye on Grabdar. This guy has definitely been one of those guys who was a bit.
I seem to remember there was a substitution last Worlds, though.
Indeed,
they subbed Avenger back in for one of their games.
It did. So there's still that flexibility there, I believe, which is something to keep your eyes on. But I feel this team plays, and Brazil in general does play slightly slower as a region. And again, I've not followed that closely this year. So RMC again would be the guy to and all of that CBLOL English crew would be the guys to talk to about how the region is looking right now. But my understanding is they play a bit slower, but they do have some good AD carries, and they can play mid game pretty coherently with a good game plan, get their way through objectives, and close out games pretty okay from that point. It's just not done fast. And there is a world against some of these better players where your passivity in the early game is going to get you rolled. it's a tough group for that in that front. Like RNG don't really play slow; they will play.
Yeah, and CBLOL is not a fast region. You're very right to bring that up. They're not a fast region.
PSG Talent. You give Hanabi and some of these players a bit of space, and you give Kaiwing room to start moving around with passive plays going on elsewhere. And Kaiwing gets to make plays in the mid game. You might be setting yourself up for some hard knocks there.
My interpretation of this team is that they are very good when they actually get their jungle and bot lane kind of going.
Okay.
But if that happens, in that best of 5 series, when Pain Gaming kind of came out swinging a fair bit more, and Carl Co, I can't quite remember the jungle of Pain Gaming, but when he invaded and basically made Aegis's life an absolute nightmare.
That's Aegis. Sorry.
It was all over.
Top laner.
It was completely over. Red Canids definitely have a large reliance on their jungler actually helping to get the game going to any extent. Similar to once of Sengoku Gaming for really to actually enable things. They don't really have that back pocket. I do think Titian, I think the AD carry for Red Canids is still cracked. Probably the best player on that team.
He's really good. Yeah.
He's also just got a lot of flair on social media. Like a lot of people follow that guy. He's got a cool name. Really I appreciate them. And like, the thing is that like CBLOL, like as much as they haven't been like a top tier minor region, they always bring a certain amount of like chutzpah with them, a certain amount of swagger. And I really appreciate that.
I don't have high hopes, but at the same time, I don't know. This team just feels something special, and the fact is they are actually getting to run back the exact same roster from Worlds. I think also helps them significantly because now you don't have international stage jitters. This is actually a team that went only 6 months international play, going back it again, which means you've already built this kind of connection and just understanding of what does it mean to travel and then to still play League and everything. And now you're going to be in front of a crowd. Is that a buff? Guess what? CBLOL played in front of a crowd, so they're already familiar with that kind of environment, whereas some regions like the LJL didn't get to do that. So I do worry a little bit for DFM. Is the crowd aspect gonna have an effect? We'll find out. I don't know. But Red Canids, they did their 5-game banger series run back being 2-1 down with a crowd behind them. So, I mean, that does help. But I think we'll just have to wait and see, lads. Yeah. Let's move it to Group C.
Let's go for it. Well, we have all of the English-speaking regions.
We'll come back to the LCS a bit later because we already kind of went down that rabbit hole at the very top of the podcast. So let's talk G2, 3-0ing basically every single team, Nymaera and Initialise.
Yeah. And see, I have the X Factor here where
You do?
Well, I've been an LEC caster this split, so I've got all of the information hopefully on this team. So halfway through the split, we saw Fnatic really popping off. We saw that Rogue went on their 9-0 undefeated first round robin. And there was a question of like, well, okay, if G2 and Fnatic, this is before Misfits kind of made their upper end run and stuff like that too. It was just like at this point, you know, who's winning this and why? And at the time, it was very much a case of like Fnatic are just stopping other teams from playing the game by playing so heavily around bot side. And if they win bot side, they just win the game. They're very good at snowballing leads through there. But there was the caveat of, I think G2 could win this split if they make it more about the mid jungle, because they found ways in quite a stale mid jungle European meta. Anyway, I think worldwide has been different. In Europe, it's been quite stale in mid jungle. And I thought that if you could get G2's mid jungle rolling, they could be really, really strong, and that would win them the split because Jankos and Caps were starting to be more facilitators for the team. It was Caps on stuff like Ryze and Victor not taking teleport but taking Ghost, and then just using that as kind of like a mechanism to kind of paper over the cracks of just saying like, look, let's just make sure we can brute force some early skirmishes, get ahead through mid jungle, and then we'll start getting Broken Blade ahead, who's the real carry of the team. And that was good enough for a while, but they weren't quite clinical enough about how they were playing around their early game. They'd lose like one early skirmish to a team like Fnatic, and then they'd just kind of lose. Misfits, they couldn't close out the game. So like they were still like figuring some stuff out. And then as soon as they got on freaking stage in playoffs after they kind of got bopped by Fnatic in their first round, like they just absolutely exploded. Jankos and Caps are on very good form. If we see G2 playing in the form they did in the semifinals and their finals, like I have no doubt that this team is going to be a strong contender for maybe the tournament, actually. I I think that they are an unpredictable enough they are an unpredictable enough early game team to upset a lot of typically very strong lanes. They went through Rogue and Fnatic playing with, like Humanoid and Larson, who are notoriously hard to kill, and somehow they'd get huge advantages through mid lane, and it'd be like, well, that's game over. You're really far behind on champions you expected to just be very safe, and they're not. So I think that G2, I don't know whether they're going to come in with the same form that they had domestically, but if they do, they are a scary team. They're a scary, scary team.
So I want to ask the question as an innocent, this is probably the most casual season since I've come back to properly covering and watching League alongside you lads. Because I was doing content around LEC and stuff over the last few years. So I've been a super passive observer this year. Flakard and Targamas, this is their first time playing international. As
first time playing in LEC.
Yeah. So while it's a very good place to be going, do we actually think their bot lane in isolation stands up to the other bot lanes?
So here
in the whole tournament, I don't want to focus just on that.
So
I'm just a little worried about them.
I'll throw some. So let me throw some context.
So I think you're bang on with the top side.
So there was a really good conversation. I recommend going back and watching the VOD of this. There was a Summoning Insight episode with Dylan Falco, who is the coach of G2.
Yes.
Who was brought in when the big shuffles were happening, when the Reckless...
Wait, wasn't Dylan also a former coach in the LJL? Isn't that who
he was? Dylan, no, it's just Dylan Falco was the guy who also coached like Fnatic and stuff.
That's right. Yeah, that's
and he was the one who helped get Schalke through on their miracle run at that time.
Yeah.
So he's very well regarded. He's right up there as one of the best coaches in Europe. I think it's fair to say at this point. He's done some really good stuff with some rosters that maybe shouldn't have succeeded as well as they have done. It's a very good job with them. And he was brought in and given a fair amount of control, or at least input, onto how this roster was built. And they built this roster over Worlds. So when they were doing tryouts, and it wasn't tryouts in the really weak sense of the word where you do it over off-season and no one actually has a good team to scrim against. And so your tryouts are kind of a little bit hard to gauge how useful they are because they're into kind of no-name, weird, ramshackle, that's what I'm looking for, put together rosters that aren't actually all that competitive. You don't know how useful the data is. This was tryouts against T1, RNG, or like Damwon, EDG, all of these teams. EDG shouted out the G2 tryout roster as one of the primary reasons they did well at the World Finals, because that was the guys they were scrimming against doing fucking tryouts. Like, that is quality tryout practice material. And there was a conversation where Thorin basically said, I had private conversations with Ocelot, with Carlos, basically saying they had credible reason to be able to buy out Viper. They could have had Viper on G2. So they were saying, and they chose Flackett because it fit the team better. And when they were building the team, and what Dylan was talking about this as well, when they were building the team, they were trying to find a way, much like when Peter Dunn was talking about when they built the Evil Genius roster. It's like, great, you've got to have 5 good players, great players if you can, but building super teams rarely works because they still need to work as a 5-man unit. And that is what G2 tried
once
to do.
in a blue moon they work.
Yeah, once in a blue moon they work. G2 did it, potentially back in 2019. I think that's fair to say. But Flackhead was chosen over people like Viper, that the world champion, this insane mechanical god of AD carries, best AD carry in the world, etc., because he fit the team better. And it took them a while to make him work. It took them a long time to make him work because they needed to figure out how to make sure he could play weak side, but still not put him under the absolute bus and leave him out to complete dry so he could actually still play the game.
So, I think for me...
I think that could be interesting at the international level where, okay, you've got a fair amount of experience. They've worked out how to make this guy work. You're going to have a play-in state or the group stage here to give a little bit more experience. And they clearly feel this team has got what it takes to succeed at a very high level, and they put a lot of effort into making sure this roster was good.
It's not so.
The question is all of these steps, all of this roster building, all of the additional experience you get in groups, enough to take them far into the tournament? against RNG, Ming and Gala, against Gumayushi and
Okay,
Carrier.
okay, hang on. Right.
Whoa,
So,
I don't know if they get there, mate. I'll be honest.
Well, oh no, I think they do. I think that G2 are a solid team, and I think that the story of EU has been ever since basically after the G2 Super roster fell apart, because everyone's like, we've got to meet them on an individual level. Actually, the teams that succeeded are, as Sam said, the teams that actually mesh together. Now, I've had a soapbox about precious few things, like in the last 6 months to a year. I've had about 2 things. One, buy Medjai's and Ari. It's a great item. Stop playing it. Just Everfrost bot really annoys me. So that's one thing. The other thing has been the best teams of Europe have had the best GMing, and they've made the most coherent rosters. You can see that with Mad Lions, where they managed to have a really good roster between Humanoid and the rest of them, not just being good individual players, but you can see how Mad Lions kind of suffered when Armor couldn't really be flexible outside of the role he played for their previous iteration, and LJL to a certain extent too, right? Look at like LJL and Armor as players that succeeded within the roster they had, but outside of that, they've kind of struggled to keep it together. I think that you look at Rogue this split, I think that Malrang has been a really good fit for the team, and I think this applies to G2 as well, where you have like Flacker and Targamas who are actually very flexible players. You know, Flacker was a Senna player outside of just being a Jinx Aphelios player too, and you look at how they've evolved into kind of being just a duo lane that would soak up pressure and then eventually turn online in team fights, and maybe, you know, let Flacker be on a champion, which allows Targamas to roam on his crazy large champion pool. Like Broken Blade and Targamas had incredibly large champion pools for the LEC. They had the highest unique picks of any players in their roles. But you go from that into like the finals where they are, well, the finals and the semifinals where they are smashing lane versus Hilly and Upset, who are, you know, meant to be a world-renowned bot lane, who are, that's a good benchmark for me. When you look at LPL bot lanes, I actually think that Hilly Upset would have been up there on a par with some of your best bot lanes in the world, and actually G2's bot lane played very well around that. I think that, yes, you're right to call them out as less experienced players, but I think they're confident players. There's a touch of
yeah, we've
arrogance.
seen confidence turn to arrogance. Yeah, that's where I was going to jump.
But I think that arrogance works for them, because you look at like EG, right? You look at EG as players who are coming in with a bit of arrogance to them. I think that they're not going to be cowed, and you have experience on your roster to keep them in line. I think G2 are coming in with a good mindset, and they are a coherent roster, and that has been the real golden formula for EU in the last couple of years. You've got to get your team on the same page, and G2 did that better than anyone else in Europe.
But we haven't seen really the EU, or rather the LEC, really replicate the success of G2 of that past time. We'll have to see if this risky move that they made to sign these 2 players in the bot lane will pay off long term. So far, in the short term, it's worked out rather well.
I also think that Broken Blade is probably like the second best or third best top.
Oh yeah, like we've not talked about top side, because I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
he's really
your
good.
take. Like,
he's really good.
Broken Blade is also having, I mean, it's just nice to see an ex-TSM player actually do good afterwards.
He's very impressive.
Good. Always good. Yeah, G2, good team.
Good team.
I don't think that we need to really talk about EG, because we've
already talked about
the
start of the show, yeah.
So then it comes over to Order.
Order.
So I'm on the full copium train, lads. I have taken the tablet. I drank the Kool-Aid that Corporal gave me. So I'm wicked on board that Order are going to make it out of this group, and that one of the other 2 teams is a sacrificial lamb. I believe Biopanther will prevent Broken Blade from running over him, and he can stall Impact. I believe Corporal will do his damnedest, and then the rest of the team, apparently they've got like an Arya-esque kind of player in their mid lane. I
watched Vitals. I think he's a fun Silas player. I think he's got some work to do.
Corporal says very high things. I don't know, man. I'm just replicating it, man. I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, man. I don't know what you're talking about. He's great. He's not fun. He's great.
Sure. Cool. Yep.
He's great. I swear.
Cool. Yeah, Kise is good. Kise is good. I just think that I think that like he did make some really big Silas plays. I also think he overextended and made some pretty bad mechanical misplays at the same time.
Never.
Like I feel, God, I don't know. I think LCO, I'm not necessarily impressed by their level of play. I think they're fun. I hope Corporal does well. I would love to see them like shit on EU or NA. That would be such good banter.
Fun.
That would be so great.
It would be fun.
I don't think it's a hard chance of them doing that, buddy.
I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I think he has clearly got hands. Guys played, I think at least during the regular season, the most he played a champion was twice. Everything else was like, he was just playing lots and lots of different stuff. He's a good Yasuo player, which is always good fun. Undefeated on that. And, you know, obviously, love Corporal. Biopanther's a veteran of region. I just don't think, I think unless there is some upsets, and there's definitely some world for that to happen, again, there's enough inexperience around the veterans on the LCS and the LEC representatives to potentially, you know, get some stuff out, especially if you do catch some of these teams in the Love Garden. G2 and Evil Genius is like, there's an interview that came out a couple of days ago on Invent Global from Danny, who's saying, yeah, we know our early game's actually not great right now, and against, you know, international teams that could really hurt us. Just our mid and late game.
Guess what G2 are really good at?
Exactly. The problem is that you're looking at someone like G2, it's like, what are they really good at? Like, yeah, smashing early. Jankos and Caps will come at your mid laner and eviscerate them, remove them from the field of battle.
And in all fairness, right, Biopanther is the only player on this team that has ever played international.
Yeah, he was part of the really big Chiefs roster for a while.
Yeah. So every other player, Kenvi, Kisei, Puma, and Corporal have never played international. So you know how I was kind of like, ooh, well, we'll see how G2's rookie, newie players do. What about if we just say 4 players and it's fucked? But I mean,
I apologize. It was Direwolves and Pentanet he played for, not Chiefs. So like he played for the other orgs that were good for there, not them. So I apologize.
I was like, wasn't he a Dire Cub for a while?
Yeah, he was.
He was with
Corporal. So this is a really interesting. So hang on, Lexi.
The coach of Pentanet last year, Uri something.
Udisoft,
he was their jungler.
Yeah.
In Cubs. Anyway, yes.
So but one thing. So this is a tangent. So remember NeoSurf Cup, Lexi, which was when the event we went to, like a month or 2 before we started casting. Direwolves were actually boot camping in EU, and they were there. Direwolves were there. Now, I'm not sure the Dire Cubs were there, but if they were, then we would have literally, like, just before we crossed paths. Oh, no, it would have been actually, no, that would have been a little while before, because that would have been the same split where he was in the LJL. But, like, we very nearly crossed paths with Corporal. Another timeline where we stayed a little bit longer on there. We could have actually met up with Corporal just before we started casting. That was a weird happening.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Timelines. It's a wild world we've somehow done, and yet we still now know Corporal. Look at that. That's how it worked out. Almost could have crossed paths, didn't. Still did. Look at us. Yeah, I don't really feel like there's much more to say about Order, is there? Go watch the Corporal interview. We'll try and grab one of the lads from that team at some point. If anyone has any particular requests. Apparently, Order are super down to just chat to people in general.
Hell yeah, I'd love that.
So if you're a journalist, or if you're just a news publication or a podcaster, the Order lads are down.
All of the LCO lot are so chill, honestly. The atmosphere they breed over there is great. Because like I chat with Pabu every so often on Twitter, and he's a really cool guy. I've heard many good things about Shaz as well. Potentially, he's going to get himself.
He's apparently an absolute darling.
I've heard that some teams are interested in him around ERLs and elsewhere. We'll see what happens with that.
Why do you think all of the Aussies are now suddenly dispersing everywhere around?
I think getting into the
ERL
ERL system and working way up the EU chain is not a bad way to do things, actually.
Well, they don't have any other way to do it at home. It's either because their own region got blown up, didn't it?
God, true.
God bless Grubhub. Because, I mean, if without them, the show might not even be going on. By the way, go and ask Rusty if you want information about that region.
Cool.
He is
the
most
chat you everything
historical,
about that.
knowledgeable person, theoretically, due to tenureship. Because
Rusty
he was
shouted us out too as well, which is cool.
Yeah, he was like the former pro player that turned into a caster, commentator, and now he's the host of the show. Everybody there seems lovely. Gentlemen. We've been building up to this all episode. Yeah. This has definitely turned into a far longer episode than I was expecting. I don't know about you, gentlemen.
Oh yeah,
but
we got excited about some of these teams. That's why
we did. While I quickly set something up, does someone mind explain what we're about to do?
So we're gonna go through each of the groups, and I don't know exactly what format we're going to do this in, but at the bottom of our document we read off of the topics that we loosely want to talk about, I put a table in there, and we are going to put in our predictions for pre-tournament. vaguely informed opinions of how these groups are going to go. Now, obviously, we have more information on some groups than others. I think my Group A and my Group C, I'm pretty happy with how I would rate them. The Group B could be a bit all over the place, so that's a caveat to it. However, we're still going to give our best in terms of just having something to hold ourselves to account for our read on the tournament and how we think it's going to go. So, this is probably something that we're going to clip, probably something that we're going to go shove onto social media at some point so people can flame us all they want. But yeah, we're going to go start predicting these groups. And I'd imagine we're just going to go... Should we... how do you want to do this? Do you want to go C to A because DFM's like that's the group team, that's the group that we know the best? Or what do you want to do? What did you want to do this in? Because I can see different reasons for it. We can start with a high note of Group A because we're LJL content. It's kind of what we do. But we can also
the way that you suggested C to A because we've also got T1 in that group. So let's leave T1 as well because I think T1. Also T1, the actual monster himself. By the way, having T1 at the LCS finals was great. By the way, his little speech coming out. I want more of that shit. Just full stop in general. I wanted Baus to be doing that. How sick would it have been for LEC if Baus had come out and done some stupid speech? And
now, I don't mind that. I think that getting personalities in, which are big personalities, is probably the future of broadcasting because of the audiences that they bring. I do think, though, that when you have a lot of history in a league, and this is like LCS 10-year anniversary, and not utilizing that to its fullest extent in favor of bringing in big personalities, I wonder if that's the correct decision. Because you look at the LCK finals, they had this split, and I think that was a wonderful ceremony. I think that meant a lot.
Yeah.
And I wonder if some other regions could have utilized that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say for the LCS, I think it was probably the right call for this one because they've been really struggling with changing their image because they have been forever done in as being too corporate. And this was a way of buying into a different vibe for NA, which is more around streaming culture, around the likes of T1 and the ridiculous ego Bay Life kind of thing, especially when the Bay Life stuff is kind of
dead,
turned a little bit. It's died a bit, and also, TSM are not the darlings right now for various reasons.
So does LCS have a brand outside of C9, TL, and TSM doing well?
No, well, exactly, and I think that's the reason having someone like T1 come in and help build up a different brand and give them a different vibe and take away from that kind of hyper polished, sometimes soulless content.
So hang on, just so obviously just said that thing back then, but I do agree that they do have a brand outside of that. That's the inflammatory statement. I think that the LCS is trying to take another view on things, and I think that it's I think it is important for them to iterate and find themselves a place where they are comfortable with their viewership and their audience, and I really applaud that. So I'm interested to see how they do over the next season or two. It'd be great to see them kind of build up into a different kind of imagery in the league space. I think we are plateauing currently in different content, and I'm glad that they're trying something else.
But no, I still don't agree. I think this is a good direction, but we watched that draw show. What the fuck was that? Seriously. I mean, I went and watched the last draw show with Yankos for Worlds, right? And did a point for point. The draw show time was like vastly shorter. Like just raw shorter. They rushed through it. The Tigress was trying to give out a lot of information. Like it didn't have the prestige of a 10th anniversary region. I was greatly disappointed.
Yeah, so I mean, I maybe they just wanted to get over and done with, and just because obviously MSI's had so many issues with it in terms of logistics this time. I can kind of understand them putting less into it, just wanting to getting it done so they can kind of get that rather than setting up a separate broadcast for it, particularly because all of the NA broadcast was on the road. I can kind of understand that. I do really love what they did with the last draw show though, in terms of giving a bit of history and a bit more flair to each of the teams we draw. It's draw C9, C9 coming from here, blah blah blah. They did this, blah blah blah. And you get to have a little 30-second speech on the teams. You kind of get the intro to it. I think that's a good kind of very concise way to sell all of the teams in it. And I think that maybe they could have done that again. And I would have quite liked that. But I think that this one
I think that finals broadcast had a lot of good things. And also the semi-finals as well. I think that whole weekend for them, there was a lot of good. I'm sorry, that draw show got so much ire from the community, and then it was over and done with so quickly. I almost feel like because the community were just like, what the fuck is going on? But Yes, I'm just seeing you guys type quickly, so I'm gonna just wait for you guys to hide that, and then I'm gonna transition over. I know you've done. I'm just waiting. Okay, now we'll transition over. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is now prediction hour. Well, not hour. God, I hope not. It's not an hour, but we've already got them, so it should be pretty easy. I'm going to be going through this with the audience as we go through this. Samuel.
Yes.
Who have you put in third place as I type out my one?
I've gone with order. I don't think, as I try to get rid of the highlight and fail miserably. Hang on. That was well done. Let's try that again. None. There's the button. There we go.
Hey.
Cool. Yeah, I think order probably.
Okay. Alex?
No way. I also put order as my third place.
Wait.
You guys need to
I've seen what you've typed, Lexi.
You guys need to go get on that hopium copium, man. That shit is great. It is cracking, man.
Have you put G2 in third, Lexi?
Someone had to be my sacrificial lamb, all right? And I'm also a big fan of Danny. So someone had to be my sacrificial lamb, and Caps is going to turn into crap.
This is no, but at this point, this is just like the fandom list rather than like this team is actually good or not.
Did we ever say I had to like? Had to
you know
be
what?
right. I could just.
You know what? You know what? I appreciate it. I disagree violently. But I
absolutely, I understand where you're both coming from, but Corporal synced me up. I might need another dosage in like 2 weeks before the event actually starts. But for now, I'm well and truly dosed up. Nymaera.
Hello.
Who is your second place team as I type out my second place?
Well, I mean, should I just do my top two after that point? Because we
go for it.
process elimination. Okay, well, mine was pretty obvious. It's the pools that they're in. It's EG in second and G2 in first.
All right. Time.
Second verse, same as the first. G2 first, EG second.
EG are going to be first, lads, and Order are going to be second. It's going to be an absolute crying fiesta at EG. Now, if I get this right,
smell the fumes coming over the airwaves.
Oh my god!
Imagine the universe where I get this right. What the fuck does that look
You will be the smuggest bastard in all of EU.
I would be wrong as well for doing it. No, I think you two have the sensible prediction. I think those are the surefire ones. I'm just going because I want Order to make it out.
That's fair. That's fair.
I don't want LCS to get kicked out again by LCO.
That would be hilarious. That would be so hilarious, man.
I don't know if I could deal with Jojo Pune and Danny getting the absolute shit getting kicked out.
What do you think happened to GT 2016? What do you think happened to them?
Yeah, it would be bad.
Well, Treats left the region. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. That was a rough one. Gentlemen, my fourth place team for Group B, I guess it's just RC. It's Red Canids.
Hey, I have actually gone for Istanbul Wildcats. I think that, well, okay, we'll get around to it a little bit later. But yes, reasons. We'll get to reasons after we've got a bit more shape in the group.
All right. Sam?
I've joined Alex with Wildcats, but again, I debated putting Canids there as well. So I don't think, but yeah, that's.
Well, am I right to assume if I go IW for my third place team, that you guys have gone, oh, it's red. Oh, it's R.
What do you know?
It's just red. Have you guys, okay, so we've just flicked these two around. Fair enough.
So yeah, I do think that Red Canids are, they're a younger team in CB LOL. I think they will have done a lot of learning from last Worlds. Not that Istanbul Wildcats won't have done over the last year competition as well. But remember, they didn't qualify for Worlds because it was Galatasaray last time around.
Indeed,
it wasn't it?
And that was an interesting matchup between them, DFM, and the rest of it. But I do think that Red Canids have. I think they're slightly more cerebral about the way they play the game. I like Grevthar. He plays a lot of weird shit. I think that's fun. I think that... I wish I had a better read on this group, on these two teams in particular. I don't want to just go well, last year, this is the way that CB LOL and TCL worked out last time. But I do think the Red Canids have some hope to them. I would like to see them do well. And I think TCL, again, is still kind of rebuilding a bit.
Yeah, I think the region definitely needs another year. but I could definitely see CBLOL in like a year actually being a pop-off region.
I also more I've been infected by the CBLOL English guys and their copium, so blame Trajan and RMC.
Oh god,
it's their fault.
For putting on such a good show continuously. God damn it.
I know, right?
God damn. Yeah, gentlemen, my first and second in that order is RNG PSG. Am I right in assuming that's probably the same for both of you two?
Yes. I think there is a potential for this to go to a tiebreaker, and I think RNG would win that tiebreaker.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a good chat.
I think there's a chance that it does go 1-1. It's best of one. It's volatile. It's still a round robin. I do think that PSG are going to struggle through mid jungle. I think Jahi's
Jahi's really good. He dragged that team over the finish line by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
He managed to keep Knight down just about, and the rest of the team were dragged along behind him.
I think Gian and Bay aren't bad players. I just think that when you're up against,
the Emperor of Spring is the Emperor of Spring for a reason, people. Like,
very true.
Super good.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, I think Al has a call with the tiebreaker. A lot of that for me will depend on whether RNG have managed to work on some of their issues from playoffs, because there is now a little bit of time where they do have some space to do that, and hopefully some time to prep, because we did see some flaws in jungle and top, and the early games in particular for RNG were often a little bit suspect. Like, top esports are a fantastic early game team, don't get me wrong. It's very hard to win against them in an early game, but there was some pretty consistent advantages that Karsa and Knight in particular were getting early on, and it would be down to the likes of Xiaoku and Gala to basically hold on long enough in the early game to turn it around in mid and late game, and they were just better at punishing Baron flips. Let's be real. Top cannot manage a purple worm to save their goddamn life. Like, oh my god.
I'm picking up what you're saying, Sam, but I actually want RNG to actually go 5-1 or undefeated in this group.
Fine, I see it.
But if they go 5-1, it will be a tiebreaker probably with PSG.
So I don't think PSG actually go 5-1. I think they go 4-2. I think they could.
I think they drop against low teams.
I think they could drop I think they could. Whether they do, I think there's a better chance that RNG goes 6-0 or 5-1 than PSG go 5-1.
In
Kaiwing, I trust. In Kaiwing, I trust.
That's a fair person to put a lot of faith in.
I do really rate Kaiwing and Unified. That's why especially in a meta, despite some nerfs, where I still feel like teamfight AD carries are pretty damn powerful, and you've got enough options that it's difficult to ban all of the good options out. Hell, you got Misfortune, Zaya, Caitlyn still viable, Jinx still viable, Aphelios still viable, Zeri still viable, even if those last three have been hit a fair amount. You can't get rid of them all. You can't get rid of them all. And I think you give one of them to Unified and Kaiwing on something that facilitates that and gets some roams off, and they will be able to perform in a team fight. So I think it's difficult to shut that out.
All right. We've stalled it out for long enough, lads.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Actually, our RNG have actually just endorsed NFTs. I'm sorry, going to have to just change this.
Well, they're not going to win a single match now. Oh, how did that happen? Oh, no, man.
No.
Oh, how did that happen? Well, there we go. All right. Okay.
Literally in the last 54 seconds. God damn it.
So, Red are now third. RNG are fourth. So, Istanbul Wildcats are now making it. Congratulations to the Wildcats.
Wow.
Oh, well, for me at least. For you guys.
NFT related trauma.
Yeah.
Fucking metaverse.
NFT. Tech W.
Okay.
TT, Jesus Christ.
Okay, well, that's actually only my second hottest take today, because my group A, just to quickly reveal it, because this one should be obvious, it's going to be DFM and then a bunch of randoms. So enjoy that. Hope that one, you remember that when DFM are lifting the trophy for MSI, and yeah, you should be, watchful of our LJL overlords.
So I need to
ask. Throw that computer screen up into its chat. You know the copy pass.
I need to know the big question. Nymaera.
Hello.
Are you mentally well at the moment, my dude?
Never been better, which is probably a statement on the rest of my life rather than actually what's happening right now.
Well, I'm glad to hear you're great. I'm just concerned because you are kind of known as the T1 fanboy, and you just
I'll maybe do this in a different order. I'll maybe do this in a different order.
A bunch of randoms. You all saw it, you all heard it, but in reality, gentlemen, let's actually go through properly. 4th place, Sam's already shown it. He's put Z, A's, and I am doubling down with him. Nymaera, are you tripling down with us, or?
Yeah, I am. I hope they do well. I just don't think this is an easy group for them to succeed in. I think that the pool, getting DFM as a pool 4 team is rough. I think they are way above. They're way above that level. I think that them being in pool 4 destabilized a lot of these groups. So I'm sad that has been the case.
It's
but
NLC EU Masters seeding all over.
It literally is. It legitimately
really
is.
Actually, oh, that's weird.
If you had an inverted commas like group of death, this probably is it in some ways. Even if T1 are a step above everyone else, that fight for the 2nd seed is an all-out brawl, and unfortunately, I don't think A's have the weapons to bear on that one.
Alex,
yes.
I want you to type out your 3rd place team for us, and then to tell us who it is.
Saigon Buffalo. I will add a caveat with my 2nd and 1st places, but I do think they are going to go through in 3rd. I think that there are a lot of, like I said, stylistically, I think that DFM, who is one of the remaining teams that I haven't written down, have a good matchup versus them. I don't think that they're going to be a weak team. I just think that DFM and T1 are going to be stronger.
I can't allude completely why, but Sam and Nymaera will know why. I don't even think the matchup versus DFM and Saigon will be fucking close. I'm not going to say more.
So the rumors go. We'll leave it at that. So the rumors go.
So then, if I'm looking at Initialize's take, and then if I highlight my take, Nymaera, which way around is it going to be?
Okay, you got me.
I set him up perfectly for this, didn't I, Sam? Oh, yeah. He's done it. He went with the heart. The heart came out at the end. We all know that. All right, so gentlemen, we have across the board actually mutually agreed on almost everything outside of the order Hopium Copium take and outside of RNG, who are probably going to win that group, but NFTs, KEKW.
Yeah.
Sage and everything else. T1 are going to win Group A. I don't think that's much of a hot take. The hot take is that obviously DFM are going to be 2nd place. Now, is that necessarily a hot take, do you think, in the general community at the moment? Or do you think that's kind of a more...
Okay.
But yeah, go for it. I'm throwing it out there.
So here's why it's a bit difficult. Because obviously it's not GAM, and GAM are phenomenal. We heard even Kazu in the interview saying, look, actually we had really good scrims against them, even if the team fights were really scrappy and hard to execute for GAM because they were playing on 100 ping. And as a result, the scrims weren't always it wasn't as competitively level as they would have liked, right? Because you're paying for GAM in particular, they were playing on very crazy ping.
Yeah.
And that meant the team fighting was hard for them. So they didn't scrim as well as they would have liked against DFM. But, as a result, Saigon are good, but I don't think they're as good as DFM. I still think they're a good team. And the other thing is it's quite hard to gauge how good VCS is a region are because we've just not seen them in forever. And they were at one point really good, but we know that the fortunes, so to speak, of various emerging regions and minor regions goes up and down over the years. We've seen everything from Albus Nox Luna, taking games off the likes of an Imperious Rocks Tigers to doing Jackal for years. DFM got out of groups and managed to go ahead of C9, but we've also seen years where we had like V3 in 2020. And as a result, VCS seemed to be consistently above a lot of the other minor regions. I don't know how good they are anymore, especially when it's not their 1st seed either, and it's a 2nd seed who definitely had some obvious weaknesses potentially to exploit. As a result, I'm putting them in 3rd. I think DFM are better than them. I think DFM are more equivalent to someone like a GAM, even if potentially I think GAM and DFM are very stylistically opposed, potentially in some ways, and that would have been a much more exciting and interesting matchup.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of caveats to the VCS, and I'm sure that the VCS English folks will have a lot to say about that. And again, they are the regional experts on them. However, things which are kind of hard to argue against is the fact that if you haven't been to an international competition for that long, it's going to suck. We know what it's like to be a rookie at an international event. We've seen that really hit a lot of players. V3 summer 2020, that was a big thing for them. And even though they have good regional scrim partners, that's always going to be a factor. And I hope that they turn up. I hope that they do their region proud. I just think there's a lot working against them.
And by the way, this is this table for me. I have a big question mark if GAN made it. By the way, if GAN was playing here, I don't know if I put DFM second. And I'm being very honest with our audience here. I think we all would potentially struggle to put DFM there outside of kind of going, we're sucking on the hopium-copium train a little bit on this one to kind of put them there. It's going to be competitive. I just think this is, we said it a few times, we're going to keep using this comparison. Rascal Jester Sengoku, Saigon Buffalo kind of level. Maybe Saigon Buffalo's are slightly better than them. I wouldn't even put it past them. But they're not DFM. And Kazu, in the interview I gave him, he literally said, we knew out of the 3 games, TF Nocturne would beat them. We could have 3-0'd them. We could have 3-1 them. We 3-2'd them. I knew it was going to beat them in the best of 5. We didn't care. We knew we were going to get the win. I think that might be kind of a bleed effect that might happen to the 2 teams below DFM in this standing. T1, though, because we've not talked about them outside of our comparison, while Kazu's gave us the 50-50 quote, I don't, lads, T1, they're
very good. And also, Faker International Stage, it's just a thing. Like, I don't know, Faker International competition is with
Korean
a crowd. In a home international competition for the first time that, I'm trying to remember the last time that Fake's actually been at a Korean international
get
event.
That historian brain
well,
going.
he didn't go in 2014 because
that was
SKT didn't qualify. They didn't go in 2018.
Trying to remember if any of the MSIs were there.
In Korea. Unless there was an MSI there.
He was like obviously famous for winning in Shanghai a lot of times, right? When MSI was there, but
that was his
2015
stomping ground.
MSI 2015 was in Korea, I think.
Either way, but like it's been a very long time, and I think that like Faker is one of these few players with that huge X factor to them on that kind of shit.
Yeah, well, we saw the crowd fucking pop off for T1 during the actual finals over in the LCK, and as Nymaera's already mentioned, those are going. Go for it, Sam.
It was in the States. It was 2015, so I was wrong. You guys keep talking.
Bugger. Well, disappointing, but I mean, T1 are probably the greatest team. Coming into the they are probably the best team as a blanket statement coming into this tournament, as we've already mentioned. They're just so good at League. I'm looking forward to just watching Faker in general and T1 at this tournament. The fact that DFM get to play against them, a lot of fun. You put a little note in, Nymaera, into your predictions around DFM. I just want you to kind of explore that a little bit further as a conversation point.
I think that DFM. Yeah, I think that DFM are the better team than Saigon Buffalo. I think that they are more flexible. I think that on an individual level, they are higher than them, with the exception of BNJ being very good. I think that he can be a wild card. I think that best of 1 makes it volatile. I think if it was a best of 3, it would go in the scoreline, which I said, or potentially even more. I mean, we'll see, whatever. But like, I think this probably comes down to a tiebreaker. I think that DFM narrowly lose 1 game, and I think that they win another one, and then it comes down to a tiebreaker and they win through that. I don't think that Saigon Buffalo are going to go out without throwing out some really harsh punches, but I do think that it is an uphill battle for them for a number of reasons, as we've said throughout most of this episode.
Sam, any last closing points here?
I would like to see T1 drop at least 1 game to either Saigon Buffalo or DFM. I think that would be a serious feather in the cap for one of those teams. And I think it would be really good, particularly considering we've had that chat earlier about, a lot of Western, we'll call it, English-speaking dismissal. I think that's probably fair potentially of the LCK and LPL region. I don't know that. I don't know the online conversations as well there. So, I don't want to comment on that. But like a lot of the conversations I've seen online of these regions saying, oh, but why are they getting to play against these teams? Oh, it's so boring. It's like, well, it would be a good way to shut them up. And I'd like that. As much as I suspect T1 win this tournament, I think there would be something quite satisfying in taking a win off that, or getting to the Rumble stage and doing the same to the likes of, RNG, G2, whoever else gets there.
For sure. Well, with that said, we're going to end out this podcast episode. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to ask us a question about the podcast, you can do that by simply joining our Discord server, jumping into the podcast question channel and just asking it in there. We'll cover it in the next episode. Or you can tweet using hashtag LJL podcast. Also, if you do things on like iTunes and stuff, shout out, 5 stars, all that good stuff. Snoo Kappa, I think I'm only going to answer this question because it's easier and it covers everything. They asked us, question for the boys. The VCS are known to be a very aggressive region. GAM was known for Cartha's Nocturne cheese at Worlds. What LJL team do you think is this iteration of Saigon Buffalo resemble the most? I don't know the Buffaloes well enough to make a comment really on this one, sadly.
I think that there is an argument for certain iterations of V3 being similar to them. I think that when you had like Cog V3 with like Mujin,
okay.
I think that's about as close as you get, because you have a top laner who has a bit more of a flexible champion pool. Because the thing is, like, the LJL doesn't have that much widespread ability to play carry tops and play like versatile tops in the way that Hazard can. I think that Cog is the closest to it. I think Mujin is the most aggressive jungler that fits our side. Because I don't think that Saigon Buffaloes are like the DFM archetype.
Okay.
I think that it is Okay, Sam, sure.
No, I wanted to throw this one out and see what you thought as well, because I feel like Burning Core, if they had a good bot lane, like old Burning Core with like Once and Ray Farki.
Maybe.
What would you think about that one?
I still think that V3 is...
that way you do have the versatility.
I think that it's a more cerebral team than that, though. I think it's V3. I think they're more cerebral.
That's fair. I can see that one. I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. Just like, I think I've seen the versatility and topside focus with like junglers that do crazy shit.
What was the team that Ebby was on before he went? It wasn't Pentagram, it was
Rampage.
Rampage, man.
What about really old version of Rampage?
Again, I feel like they were... Again, that was like a once team, right? I do think that they were aggressive, but I feel like you need more cerebral jungler and more like curated drafts, and I don't think Rampage with that. So I do think it's like Cog V3. I think that's about as close as you get. It's not a close archetype, but...
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. We've had this kind of... Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I think that is the closest one we've got. Hopefully, our top lane jungle pool. Well, I mean, our top laners are fine. Bring back Cog. I don't know how he didn't get picked. I still don't understand that. The Kazu echoes us as well.
No, but when you look at like the VCS having Hazmid, Kiaya's the huge one. You had like Coated, and like VCS has a strong top lane pool. LJL doesn't necessarily in terms of the carry side of it. Teamfight top laners, sure, but not in terms of like more dominant top laners.
Well, gentlemen, with that, we will be ending this episode of the podcast, episode 11 in the book. A much longer one than I think we remotely thought we were going to have. But I mean, with production, with predictions and then giving our brief overview on each of the teams, it did take us a while. And certain teams we wanted to gush about. T1, crazy idea. If we have an opportunity to gush about them for a little bit, we will. But with that said, Sam. What are you up to over this next week? Got anything you want to plug? You're doing something you masters, I imagine.
Maybe. I'm not sure what I can say about that. I have done my quarterfinals. There are a lot of the other play-by-play casters are getting their opportunities coming up. So I'm really excited to watch those. So gonna go watch some of those games now. Actually, gonna go around Trouble's place and chill out and watch those games and celebrate from the backlands as fans. Gonna cheer on Bifrost as they clearly are going to be the victors of the upcoming quarterfinals. Please, NLC, not like this.
Not like this.
So that going to try and celebrate birthday sometime next week as well, because obviously with Wednesday was my birthday, and obviously that was just before quarterfinals and people were super busy, etc. So trying to actually do a celebration when people are A, a little more available, and B, it's not the night before big events. So looking forward to doing that. Aside from that, not huge amounts.
Bit of a break.
Hopefully.
Okay. Nymaera, coming to you, buddy. What's up?
Okay, so I have another quarterfinals cast because I'm a color caster and there are 2 of us on each cast because they're tri-cast. So it means there are more opportunities. Which means I'm on Saturday and I'll be casting Calming Core versus Unicorns Love Sexy Edition, which is a really cool series. I'm really going to look forward to that. And then we'll see what happens later on into the tournament. Maybe we'll keep the powder dry on what's happening there. But yeah, I'm excited for that. Outside of that, I don't know, just using some of the free time to sort out life stuff and everything else. That's kind of me right now.
Nice. Love to hear it. Me, over this next week, might have another interview or something coming out. Depends on how available people are. I'm trying to do as much as I can before the event starts, because the moment the event starts, pretty much no one's going to want to talk to me because I'm not official. So they don't get out of their press release numbers for me. So I've got to be very tactical with how I do this. But we'll see. We'll see what people do out there. Who knows? I might actually do some content I've said I was going to do. Did record, do work on, and then just kind of left it there. I swear I have worked on why the client is bad for pro esports. I have actually put my thoughts down to paper, even recorded it twice. I'm terrible. But with that said, though, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back next week with another episode of the podcast. With that said, thank you everybody so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Boy.
Bye.